Okay.
Live.
Welcome, everyone, to our April 15th Google Hangout, one of the monthly hangouts sponsored by the People's World. We're a daily online news source covering a variety of progressive movements, especially labor, civil rights, women's rights, immigration, and, as we'll be focusing on tonight, the environment. With our coverage of special events like this one, we try to provide a forum and voice for the activists who are working so hard to make a better world. We're not supported by corporate money. Instead, we have the support of our readers and the movements they're a part of. My name is Blake Deppe. I'm a writer for the People's World, focusing on environmental issues and culture. Tonight's topic is the fight against the Keystone XL pipeline and how that fits into the bigger picture of the fight to save the planet, including how that relates to people meeting their everyday needs, like the need for jobs and income. This is especially appropriate now, in the days leading up to the big national demonstrations in Washington, D.C. on April 22nd through 27th, ahead of Obama's official decision on the fate of this pipeline. And let's not forget that April 22nd is also Earth Day. Our labor editor, John Wojcik, will now be introducing two great panelists who will lead tonight's conversation and answer questions from you, the viewers. So if you have any questions, write those in using the Hangout's Q&A feature, and we'll get to them in due time. The panelists are longtime activists at the forefront of this fight. It's a fight for the democratic rights of everyone to play a part in deciding what happens to the environment. So here's John Wojcik. John, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Blake, and thank you very much, Stefanie Spear from EcoWatch and Tyson Slocum from Public Citizen for joining us. This is really an exciting event tonight for us. We've been looking forward to this for quite some time. Just to let everybody know, Stefanie Spear is the CEO of EcoWatch, and Tyson Slocum is the director of the energy section of Public Citizen Climate and Energy, and they, of course, are our two featured participants tonight. Stefanie Spear has been publishing environmental news for more than 20 years. And her group, EcoWatch, works to unite and mobilize people to actually engage in activism to protect and defend this environment of ours. Tyson Slocum is himself a well-known and versed advocate of affordable, renewable energy, very specifically, I mean, all for everybody, but very specifically for working families. And he has been really an activist in seeking to enable people to move away from nuclear, coal, and oil industries. So what I'd like to do now to talk a little bit more about herself and EcoWatch is turn it over to Stefanie Spear.
Hi, thanks so much, John. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and talk about such an important issue. Like you said, I've been involved in reporting on environmental news for more than 24 years, primarily through newsprint. Recently, 3 years ago, transitioned to an online news site, so EcoWatch.com. It's a leading environmental website. We report on environmental news, green living, and sustainable business. We also just launched a university vertical, and we highlight the news from students to give a venue to the 1,000 grassroots environmental organizations worldwide and students from all over the planet who are working every day to raise awareness and to make people more conscious of their impact on the earth. And clearly we need to take a right path forward toward a cleaner, more renewable energy future. In addition to EcoWatch, I also run a company called Expedite Renewable Energy. I install solar and wind projects in Ohio. It's also a consultancy business, and I consult on energy policy on the local, state, and federal level. So I've seen firsthand how we can transition to cleaner, renewable energy, and you know, we've got to do it. One great way to start would be to stop the Keystone XL pipeline. It's not the only pipeline we need our time and energy to be spent on, but clearly it's an important one. So I'm very excited to be with all of you this evening and everyone who's been able to join us today via Google Plus to talk about this very important issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Stefanie. And now, Tyson, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more?
Sure. Public Citizen has been around since 1971. We work on a huge array of issues relating to protecting consumers and strengthening America's democracy. We have a real concern about corporate influence over our democratic system, and one of our key issues that unifies all of our different issue areas is amending the Constitution to address the Citizens United decision that said that corporations are people for purposes of political speech. So in the energy space, we fight to ensure that families have access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy.
Actually, I have a question for Stefanie to start out with, but with all these questions, if the other person wants to kick in on it, it's fine, really do so. Stefanie, you mentioned the Keystone battle, Keystone XL battle. It's a big thing. It's raging now. We're coming near the climax where the president is going to make a decision one way or the other. I've heard talk from people in the environmental movement that, that they're concerned about, well, even if we win the battle of the Keystone, it might still be lose what amounts to a big war over this whole tar sands issue. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. We ran a post today on EcoWatch. It says, could we win the Keystone XL battle but still lose the tar sands war? And the article is actually really interesting, from Earth Island Journal, and it goes into information on the environmental movement. But, a quick answer to that question, of course, is yes. Even without the Keystone XL pipeline, they're going to do everything they can to get the tar sands to a port, to a coastline, to be able to export it. So there's another article on EcoWatch that I'd like to mention, and it was from March 18th, and it says, report confirms TransCanada's proposed Energy East pipeline will export tar sands unrefined. And so I'm sure everyone on the Google chat this evening has probably seen multiple maps of the United States that shows all the pipelines we have, including proposed pipelines, and there's great concern, even if the Keystone pipeline were to go through, there's other pipelines underway that will lead the tar sands to the East Coast, through Montreal, into New England. So, we have a big battle on our hands. Like Tyson mentioned, there's significant amount of money in politics, and our politicians are owned by the fossil fuel industry. So somehow, some way, we need to get more individuals ignited, educated, motivated, ready to say no. It's, power the people time for sure. And, with or without the Keystone, there's still, grave concern of tar sands still reaching our ports and being exported.
Okay, thanks. Tyson, one question that comes to mind for you, based on your introductory remarks, you talked about Citizens United. Groups like ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, spend a lot of money on dismantling and setting up environmental laws on the state level that they like. What do you think? What do you think can be done about this? And what is the general direction? What can people do to make a dent in this situation?
Well, first, what we have to do is continue to build support at the grassroots level that starts with your mayor, your city council, and then your state lawmaker, your governor, your representative, your senator, and the president, contacting all of them to say that we need to support a resolution, a formal resolution that is binding, that defines, that would amend the Constitution to say that corporations are not people for the purposes of free speech. That is the only way we are going to get over these disastrous pro-corporate Supreme Court decisions that have handed the keys to our democracy over to big corporations. And, you know, these companies are simply pursuing their financial self-interest. When ExxonMobil or another big oil company is seeking to produce more oil in North America, they understand that it's not going to result in lower energy prices for Americans. They understand it's not going to result in energy independence, but that doesn't matter to them. All they care about is getting access to another 100,000 barrels of oil a day of extra production that's going to pad their balance sheet and add to their bottom line. And what we need to cut through is this corporate messaging that we can produce our way to energy independence and to lower prices. It's all false. We have to start investing aggressively in alternatives to oil. Because we can talk about Keystone, we can talk about the tar sands, but unless we've got a concrete plan to give working families access to alternatives, too many working families live in communities that are cutting back mass transit routes, that are eliminating inexpensive alternatives to driving around in your car. We have to put more tools in the hands of working families and in communities across America so that they can have real, affordable access to our addiction to oil. Only when we begin to do those investments are we going to be able to make the tar sands and the Keystone pipeline irrelevant.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up that whole approach of involving the majority working population in this fight. I'd like to ask Stefanie about. I noticed one interesting development. Desmond Tutu, the South African freedom fighter, and the Archbishop there, well known for his years and years of struggle on issues of social justice, economic justice. He's now called for a global boycott of and a disinvestment campaign against the energy industries in an effort to reduce global climate change. So it seems that that connection, is between these movements is really growing. You just came back from Denmark. Could you comment a little bit on that? Stephanie is muted. Can somebody unmute?
Sorry about that.
Now you're unmuted. Okay.
I'd probably take all of our time left if I rattled off the very long list of people who have come out against the Keystone XL. And, the noble people who have come out against it is numerous. We've probably run in the last 2 months 15 posts that just talk about the people who have spoken out against the Keystone XL pipeline. Perhaps one that is of interest that maybe would not have been expected is when MSNBC's Ed Schultz came out against the Keystone XL pipeline. He was completely for it, but started to do coverage on it, went and visited folks in Nebraska, and turns out, he realizes that it's a bad idea and came out publicly saying, don't build the Keystone XL pipeline. So, clearly there's enough information out there for all of us to know the issues with the pipeline. Yes, I was just in Copenhagen. It was remarkable. I got to spend a full week there. And then I also spent 2 days on the island of Samso. Samso is one of the world's most sustainable islands in the world. They have 11 onshore wind turbines, 10 offshore turbines. They're trying to transition from conventional farming to organic farming. In that area, they still have a long way to go, but they generate 110% of their needs. They're a small community, but they're an excellent example of other ways we can move forward away from fossil fuels. Clearly what Tyson's saying about Citizens United and the lack of the support and investment in alternative transportation is true. You mentioned ALEC. I'm here in Ohio. Another point on Tyson is, we're living in a country that doesn't have a renewable portfolio standard. We don't have an energy bill that says we should generate X amount of power from renewable energy by a certain year. Because of that, so many states have said, well, we're going to do it since the federal government won't. And there's nearly 30 states that have renewable portfolio standards, Ohio being one. I was part of helping get SB 221 passed, which created a nice portfolio standard, but now ALEC is attacking it. Ohio is not the only state under attack. We're just going backward. We need to move forward. We need to make sure that we talk with work locally, work on the state level, work on the federal level, work to get the policies passed and then strengthen them. And then now, unfortunately, we have to fight so they don't get weakened once these policies have been passed. And it's really unfortunate. There is a better pathway forward, and we just seem to keep going the wrong direction.
Okay, thank you. And Tyson, one of the things, in addition to just outfits like ALEC, we've got major trade agreements, for example, that are being negotiated internationally. Pacific Rim, and we've had NAFTA. And how do these impact on the environment? I know that there have been complaints that these agreements they obviously don't have safeguards for workers' rights in these countries sometimes. But what about the environment? I mean, what kind of safeguards can we fight for in terms of companies that are going to benefit from these trade agreements?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that trade among communities from the very beginning of human civilization has been a defining characteristic of our species and has enabled better cultural ties and things like that. The problem with today's global trade environment is that you've got new rules enshrined in various international organizations like the World Trade Organization that prioritize the interests of the owners of the companies engaging in the trade and not in the workers or in critical environmental and social issues. So we need to have a new debate about how we define trade in today's world, and that sustainability has to mean economic opportunity for all people in cultures that are trading with one another, and sustainability in terms of environmental protection. And what we see with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and other new additions to the World Trade Organization's system is a series of proposals that will undermine key social, economic, and environmental gains that we've fought for here and elsewhere. And so I think it's really important to try and focus on more sustainability at a local level, to generate more of our energy, for example, from local community renewable resources, rooftop solar, small-scale wind, and investments in energy efficiency, and a rebuild of our transportation infrastructure. But that's going to take an awful lot of money, and right now we've got a lot of fiscal constraints in the United States, and that's why Public Citizen joined up with other consumer groups and sponsored the Climate Protection Act of 2013, introduced by Bernie Sanders and Barbara Boxer, that would put a price on carbon. It would refund about 60% of the revenues raised from that price on carbon directly back to families to help offset the higher prices we'd see, and still deliver billions and billions of dollars a year in the needed sustainable energy infrastructure on transit, on alternative fuels, on renewables, on energy efficiency, and on worker transition issues That's the kind of vision that we really need to move this country forward.
Yeah, my next question, actually, I think is to perhaps start with we're hearing from Stefanie, and then maybe you can also comment on it. There's a lot of talk. I've been watching these damn commercials now over and over again from the gas companies. Natural gas is being put forward as, well, this is a clean energy alternative. You hear it more and more. And fracking. I did hear one positive thing about fracking, and that was from Colbert, who recently said that it was, as a result of fracking, people in the town in Pennsylvania got free pizza coupons. But that was about the only positive thing that I've ever heard about fracking. I'm wondering, Stefanie, how do you react to this big campaign by the natural gas companies that they are the alternative?
Yeah, I mean, plain and simple, you know, if we're talking about reducing carbon emissions, fracking is not our solution. With methane leaks at the well site and many other environmental issues, including water consumption, you know, fracking is not going to get us where we need to be. It's the wrong direction again. You know, I always like to look at issues, you know, like nuclear power. We have high-level radioactive fuel rods, right? Spent fuel rods. So we don't know what to do with them. We still don't know what to do with them. And they're highly radioactive for a very long time. With fracking, you need tremendous amounts of water to frack a well. And when the water comes back up, it's radioactive naturally from deep down underground. And we don't know what to do with it. Here in Ohio, we've been injecting it into underground wells, high pressure injection, and it's causing earthquakes. You know, so it's not the answer. And, you know, yet again, we're continuing to rely on non-renewable fossil fuels instead of taking the right steps forward.
Do you have any reaction on that in terms of natural gas companies?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, fracking includes not just natural gas, but oil. And one of the advantages that the industry says is that fracking has led to massive amounts of production. We're now, because of fracking, the world's largest natural gas producer. In another year and a half, because of fracking, we'll be the world's largest oil producer. But let's take a look and see what that's actually done for consumers in the economy. We are producing more oil than ever before, right? Sarah Palin chanted at the 2008 Republican convention, "Drill, baby, drill." The message was, drill more oil, deliver value for consumers. Since the fracking boom in 2008, gasoline prices have gone up because oil is a globally traded commodity. And natural gas, we saw during this polar vortex storm this winter, natural gas prices skyrocketed at key city gate price hubs from $20 per million cubic feet up to $160 and $200. What we see is producing natural gas and oil from fracking does not translate to lower prices for consumers. We cannot produce our way to affordable energy for consumers. We have to transition to renewable fuels and invest in energy efficiency and more sustainable transportation infrastructure that will actually deliver real value for working families.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so on going back again to the returning briefly again to the topic of the XL pipeline, I know there's going to be a lot of activities coming up, demonstrations in Washington, things to try to get the president not to approve this. I wonder, Stefanie, if you could tell us a little bit about what's happening, but also in these protests and in these activities, if it turns out that the president does approve the pipeline, what perspective do you see? Where do we go from there? I mean, do you think that'll deal a devastating blow to the movement, or how best do you see going forward from that possibility?
Yeah, first off, with the current event coming up, you know, there's been a lot of events protesting the Keystone XL, a lot all over the U.S. of course, in D.C. There's a big event coming up in Washington, D.C., April 22nd to the 27th. The march is on the 26th. It's Cowboy Indian Alliance is doing this week-long Keystone XL protest in D.C. Be sure to check that out. Reject and Protect is the title of this week-long event. There's ways to sign up and get a lot more information. We have a post up on it, so be sure to check that out. Super important to get engaged and connected on this event and other events that'll follow. You know, I really don't have a great sense on how this will turn out as far as whether President Obama will give the green light or not. What I do know is if it gets the green light, I feel it will engage more people in the fight toward a sustainable future. There's already people who have agreed and signed up saying that they will get arrested if the Keystone XL pipeline goes through. I think it will unite the movement, so in that regard will be a positive thing. I've been involved in direct action for decades, was involved in Redwood Summer Out in the Pacific Northwest, protecting old growth forests. You know, the grassroots movement is notorious for when things get tough, they unite and they act. I'm really amazed and impressed with just all the different organizations that have come together and all the people who've come together to fight against the Keystone XL pipeline. How many people have educated themselves on these very important issues and then shared their knowledge. I could never stress enough the importance that all the knowledge that we've gained, that we share that. And we share that with our family, our friends, our neighbors. Right now with social media and all the outlets available to communicate with so many people, now is the time to talk to people about these issues. Don't get in fights, don't get in arguments, don't point your finger. This is a time to educate and motivate people to care about human health and the environment. And a discussion can go an extremely long way to helping move people from what most people are stuck in, which is this very humanistic viewpoint, thinking the planet is here for us. But they go along a journey to a biocentric viewpoint, and all of a sudden they realize that their life, their health is dependent on the health of the planet. So we need to help people along this path, educate them, and if we can just get more people talking to their representatives on the federal and local and state level, it will go a really long way. So we'll see what happens. You know, obviously waiting here day to day to see if something pops. But a great way to get engaged is to participate April 22nd to the 27th. Come to DC, do the march April 26th, and get empowered.
Okay, I have actually a question. This is for both of you, whoever wants to take it up first. But this is motivated by some really disturbing things I actually read on the EcoWatch website. You know, traditionally over the last period, I've seen here at home and overseas a lot of attacks by right-wing extremists on civil rights movement, on attacks on voting rights, attacks on workers' rights, the right to organize a union. Overseas, you see it in Colombia with people organizing unions being killed. But lately, I've been seeing attacks on environmentalists. I mean, I thought it was incredible. One EcoWatch piece that I read recently about attacks in Texas, a guy who's using public parks for private grazing, and they were having these right-wing militias come in there and and supporting the people who are subverting the environmental cleanup. I read another article on EcoWatch about deaths of killing of people who are involved in the environmental movement in Latin America and in other places around the world. So I'm wondering how, and ALEC, you talked about ALEC, Tyson, and how they support candidates who dismantle environmental protections. A lot of those candidates are also right-wing extremists. Do you see this as a special kind of threat, and do you think anything can be done about it in the coming election cycle? How do you guys feel about that? This special threat.
You know, it isn't necessarily new. For decades, those companies that are involved in extractive industries that have a large and hazardous footprint in the environment and on the climate, they have a vested financial interest to continue operating as is. They see regulations as a financial threat. They see emerging clean technologies as a direct threat to their business model. And so rather than talk about how these things are going to impact them financially, they concoct these very sophisticated strategies to demonize and attack those working in the public interest, and they seek to change the debate and confuse the American people with very slick advertising, questioning the complex issues around climate science and so forth. And it all does come down to vested interests seeking to retain their monopoly control over our energy and economic system. In a very interesting development, last year, the Trade and Lobbying Association for the Electric Utility Industry, called the Edison Electric Institute, published a white paper where they said the biggest threat to electric utilities aren't EPA regulations, they aren't Obamacare or liberals, it's solar, rooftop solar. They said that rooftop solar represents a disruptive technology that threatens to undermine our very business model. And the paper outlines strategies to attack rooftop solar, to say that it's too expensive, that it's going to negatively impact poor people. It lays out a deliberate strategy to call an increasingly inexpensive energy source actually too expensive. And that kind of illustrates the kind of campaigns that we're up against. And the key is, and I think Stefanie kind of articulated what we've seen in some of the very impressive grassroots movements around Keystone, is that we see millions of people rising up above this misinformation and speaking truth to power. The challenge is we've got so many good, decent working people, some of them working 2 jobs, that don't have time to independently verify the information coming out of these corporate campaigns. And so as a result, you've got people who are misinformed, not because they're dumb, not because they're lazy, but because they're awfully busy trying to make ends meet in this tough economy and trying to take care of their family. And they're getting a lot of information from the fossil fuel industry, and that's what the fossil fuel industry counts on, is that folks are going to be too busy to fact check. And so we've got to limit corporate influence over our system, and we've got to continue the kind of impressive strategies we've seen around Keystone to empower people and be sure that they've got all the facts they need.
Okay, thank you. Stefanie, you want to add to that in any way?
Yeah, you know, we just have to keep pounding the pavement, educating as many people as we can on these issues, and and keep fighting. I'm embroiled, like I said, in the fight against our energy policy here in Ohio. And it is just so disconcerting when you work so hard to pass a great policy, and now it's being attacked by ALEC and certain members of our Ohio Assembly. you have to expose the people who are behind this. And I think that there's a lot of power in that. But, you know, that's why, you know, it's so important to vote. We had a governor who supported renewable energy, and then Governor Kasich came in, and he, you know, doesn't want high-speed rail. He doesn't want renewable energy. But what we have learned is when you put the pressure on, it can make a difference. So again, it's just getting more people involved in the movement, more people educated on the issues, more pressure being put on the politicians who are, you know, trying to continue our legacy of fossil fuel usage and all that comes along with it.
Perhaps this is the time you want to cut in with your information.
Yeah, just to remind everyone who's joining us late, this is just a reminder that you're watching our April 15th Google Hangout, sponsored by the People's World, focusing on the fight against the Keystone XL pipeline and its relation to saving the environment and correlation to issues like jobs and livelihood. We'll be answering questions in a couple minutes. We do these Hangouts each month, so keep an eye on www.peoplesworld.org. You can also sign up for our e-blast, which we send out twice a week, and you can find that by checking out the right-hand side of our homepage. And also, don't forget to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/peoplesworld. I'll now briefly turn the floor back over to John Wojcik, and then after that, we'll start taking questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to add now to give a chance to both Stefanie and to Tyson to do station identification. That is any special plug for your organizations, what you would like people to do, how they can sign up, how they can support your work. Do you have anything that you say to us about that?
Yeah, Public Citizen's website is citizen.org, and we don't accept any money from corporations or from the government. We are entirely reliant upon the generosity of the over 350,000 members and supporters across the country.
Okay, thanks. Stefanie, how about you?
Yeah, you know, stay connected daily with EcoWatch. We are publishing the most important news of the critical issues impacting the planet. The best way to get connected with EcoWatch is to sign up for our daily blast. Go to EcoWatch.com. You'll see it right up in our header. It says sign up for our daily news. Once a day, you'll get our top 10 top news stories of the day right in your email inbox. There's no better way that you can help educate and motivate more people to care than by educating yourself on these issues and then sharing them. So I highly encourage people to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We have a nice Google Plus community as well. We're on Tumblr and every social media platform you can imagine. So, you know, sign up for a daily blast and then share the content from EcoWatch with your friends and family and neighbors. It's really getting people engaged on these issues, the issues that they care about that can make a difference. So, you know, that's how you can not only help EcoWatch, but you can help create a sustainable future.
Okay. Blake, do we have any questions that you can give us from the audience?
Sure, John. The first question we'll take is from Carl Wood, and he asks, as we move to new sources of energy, like, you know, solar energy, wind energy, how do we protect the workers and their families and communities whose lives and careers will be disrupted, who unfortunately their livelihoods do currently depend on fossil fuels? And he would like a realistic answer, meaning don't talk about retraining power plant workers in Southeast Ohio to install solar roofs.
Tyson, you want to try that one?
Yeah, Public Citizen has been proud to be working with Sierra Club, the Blue Green Alliance, and Carl Wood is with the utility workers, which represents a lot of great workers in the power sector, some of whom work at coal-fired power plants, and these are good people providing for their families. And the question is, we all know that we need to transition to a cleaner future. Let's make sure that we take care of these good, honest, hardworking folks. So what we've endorsed is the concept of financing a worker transition fund that it would be financed through what's known as a wires charge. This would be a very small charge. It would be hardly noticeable on people's utility bills that would generate the revenues needed to reinvest back in these communities. And so Public Citizen believes that this is a great approach. We'd like to expand it to include issues for moderate and low-income families, particularly investing in weatherization retrofitting programs for moderate and low-income families. And so I think that if we're able to generate a couple $1 billion a year without any real impact on rates, and that would help finance job training and new investments for these displaced workers, in addition to making sure that these communities have more energy efficient homes, I think that would be a good start.
Okay, thank you. Stefanie, how about you?
Yeah, I am on the advisory board of a community college, and they do work a lot on retraining for industries. I know that Carl wants this to be real. I personally feel retraining is real. We can bring people, you know, from the fossil fuel energy sector to the renewable energy sector. I've seen it done. So, you know, I feel that in addition to that, we need to be training people for tomorrow's future, and through community colleges is a great way to do it. You know, I'm in Cleveland, and our EcoWatch office is right by our steel mills. So that's been a huge issue in our city, where these steel mills are polluting an entire population of Cleveland. But it's always about the jobs. But the companies that aren't even U.S. based are getting all the profit, they're externalizing their costs, and the community is sick. And, you know, so somehow something's got to be done, and loss of jobs is a problem, but then we need to transition them. And we need to start leveling that playing field between fossil fuels and renewables. And, you know, we need to get these companies to stop externalizing their costs. So, you know, somehow things need to shift, and I do believe in green jobs. I do believe in a green energy future, and there's, you know, a lot of great programs out there that are working on great solutions to create jobs for people who would transition from the fossil fuel industry.
Okay, some interesting points, a controversial area. Blake, any other questions that have come in? Any others?
Sure. John Bachtel asks, specifically focusing on the concerns of the building trades unions. Their concern, how do you address their concerns that the Keystone Pipeline will create jobs when so many trades workers are unemployed? How can greater unity be built between labor and environmentalists? How do we go about doing that?
Tyson, you want to try starting with that one?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that a large pipeline infrastructure project is going to create an awful lot of short-term construction jobs. There's no way to dispute that. Long-term, the operation of the actual pipeline will create just about 20 or 25 jobs. So I think we've got to think about what types of infrastructure projects can we invest in that are going to create those kinds of very lucrative construction jobs, but doing something in a sustainable way. And I think when you look at the opportunities around high-speed rail, when you look at the opportunities around construction of wind turbines, when you look at the opportunities around solar photovoltaic manufacturing, I think that there are tremendous opportunities that would be equal to or better than what Keystone could provide on a short-term basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Stephanie, you want to add anything to that?
You know, pretty much ditto what Tyson said. You know, we're talking short-term. The Keystone Pipeline would bring in these short-term labor jobs, you know, energy efficiency, green building, all the other types of projects, solar, wind, high-speed rail. Those are the long-term sustainable type of green jobs that we need to be creating that will continue on, not just a short-term construction of a pipeline.
Okay. Blake, any other questions that have come in?
Yes. We now have a question from Libero Della Piana, who asks, well, who says, we used to talk about a peace dividend that would transfer spending from Cold War militarism to peacetime industries. He suggests, what about an environmental dividend to help transition from extractive and polluting industries to green ones? What do you guys think about that?
I think that's a great idea, and I mentioned earlier about work that Public Citizen has done with other consumer groups to put a price on carbon, and that's kind of what the question gets down to. The carbon tax that we designed, that was introduced as bipartisan Senate legislation in 2009, and then essentially reintroduced last year, it would put a carbon fee on oil, coal, and natural gas production and on imports. And the majority of the money raised from that carbon fee would be immediately kicked back to families according to family size, and we might make some adjustment for states like Ohio that are more carbon intensive than, say, California. And that way, because when you do price carbon, you are going to raise energy prices, and we need to recognize that relying on market signals or prices alone to influence investor and consumer behavior is highly punitive. It's like driving a nail in the wall with a sledgehammer. You're going to achieve your objective, but you're going to create a lot of collateral damage in the meantime, because rising prices, it has a regressive effect on moderate and low-income people. And so the rebate structure of our carbon fee plan insulates the vast majority of moderate and low-income families from seeing those price increases, and at the same time, it's dedicating tens of billions of dollars in the kind of infrastructure upgrades that families and communities need to get access to alternatives. So I think that would help establish a type of national energy policy, appropriately pricing carbon and providing the revenues to invest in a cleaner infrastructure future. I think that's got to be part of the solution.
Hey, thanks, Tyson. Stephanie, anything you want to say on that question?
Yeah, agree. You know, an environmental dividend would go a long way. We've been trying to get a carbon tax passed on the federal level for a long time. California has passed a carbon tax that's been in place for, I think, well over a year. Really positive results coming from that. Other countries have certainly done energy tariffs as well as carbon tax, and that has helped transition to cleaner renewable energy. So yes, the hard part is trying to get something like that through Congress on the federal level. We need to keep pushing for it. We need to pass it, and I think it would go a long way.
Okay. Any other questions, Blake, on our list yet?
Yes. So we have a question here from Elena Mora, who says, today's New York Times had an article about the political obstacles to making progress on climate change due to the Republican and Tea Party efforts with climate change denial. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. Can either of you comment on that?
Well, first, I wouldn't just attribute the opposition to Republicans. There's plenty of Democrats that are standing in the way, including the new chairwoman of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, Mary Landrieu. from Louisiana. So this is not necessarily a Republican-Democrat issue. There are plenty of Democrats that are questioning the science and that are refusing to lead on climate change. I think the bottom line comes down to the financial influence of vested fossil fuel and other extractive industries on the political system. When you've got a political system that consists of only two political parties, both of whom are aggressively vying for corporate dollars to finance their re-election efforts, they are going to be too dependent upon a narrow group of corporate interests for their political money and support. So we've got to disassociate corporate money from our political system. And again, Public Citizen has a campaign, democracyisforpeople.org, where we're calling on people to enlist their mayors and city councils and other local officials in supporting a constitutional amendment to get corporate money out of our system.
Hey, thanks, Tyson. Stefanie, you want to add to that too?
Yeah, so climate denying, it seems to be in the papers almost every day. But we have come a long way, and there was a new study out, and maybe the New York Times piece covered this, but a new study that delivers a blow to climate deniers. It refutes natural warming theory with 99% certainty. The post we did today on EcoWatch, all the information's out there. Climate change is human-induced. We just need to, again, educate more people on that. And yes, it's, our political system and the way it's developed and the money in politics and Citizens United that has exasperated the ability for people to still get press, still be able to be on TV with this climate denial. And it's, still poisoning the minds of Americans who haven't taken the time to educate themselves on the issue. But fortunately, we have amazing people out there, from Bill Nye to Michael Mann, Bill McKibben, who are all scholars, who have been out there pounding the pavement, getting the word out. Dr. David Suzuki, the list is very long of people who are constantly working to get the message out. We have a long way to go yet. I think the whole idea of divestment from fossil fuels is a very important one. But as far as climate deniers, we just have to keep communicating and educating people about climate change, get to the root scientific parts of the debate, and keep getting it out there. I think we have come a very long way, and the majority of people, poll after poll, shows that they believe that climate change is human-induced. So I think that all the effort of everyone, just keeping the conversation alive, will go a long way. And talk to your politicians and tell them that you care. It really matters.
Okay, I think we can take one more question, and then after that give our two panelists a chance to summarize briefly.
Right.
So if you have another one on that list for us.
Sure. This one is, last question is from Terry Albano, and she says, here in Chicago on the south side, there's a big struggle against pet coke. You guys aren't familiar with that. There are piles of pet coke being dumped. It's blowing into neighborhoods, attacking people's health. It's a big ongoing issue. Can you guys tell us about some of your experience in terms of community-based environmental struggles?
Okay, I want to start the other way with Stefanie this time.
Sure. Yeah, we've covered a lot on that issue. Again, it's when it's so clear that there's corporate profits that are poisoning community members, and they are allowed to externalize their costs. And it's very important that the grassroots effort locally contributes significantly to educating more people on the issue. I know that issue in particular has gotten lots of press nationally, and what I think is most frustrating is even though these issues get a lot of press and a lot of people involved, they still don't seem to go away. I'll use mountaintop removal coal mining as an example that's near and dear to my heart. You know, you look and you study and you educate yourself on that issue, and you would assume with all the energy and all the people working on that issue that we would be able to stop it. But it doesn't mean you give up. It means that you keep on working. You keep on working on communicating these issues, making sure they stay in the press, you know, and work with your, you know, on that kind of issue, work with your local politicians, your city council members, your mayor. You have to constantly work to get these issues in front of these politicians who have so many issues piled up on their desks that if you're not out there communicating with them and getting other people involved and as many calls as you can get into the city government, you know, that's going to create a lot of headway.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. Tyson, how about you?
Yeah, it's all about building alliances and building bridges. It's about different members of the community reaching across to talk to people that they may not have encountered before, but they'll be able to have some common ground on an issue. And so for something like these pet coke piles, you know, for those communities that are affected, get in touch with the nurses associations and with doctors associations, local hospitals. Talk to principals and teachers at public schools. Talk to daycare centers. There's always new leaves to be unturned within your own community, in addition just to your neighbors and your friends and family. But there's a lot of different potential alliances, and that's what real grassroots organizing is about. That's what community building is about, to recognize these threats and to collectively work towards making your community a better place to live.
Okay, you know, I want to thank both of you. This has been really great. But I want to see if give you a chance if you'd like to wrap up with any kind of closing remarks, any comments you want to leave us with. Start with Stephanie.
Yeah, you know, coming back toward the Keystone XL pipeline issue, this is a huge issue. If you haven't participated in a rally or had the opportunity to connect with like-minded people who care about these issues like you do, I highly recommend you take the opportunity to go to DC, take part in this upcoming event, Reject and Protect. It's you know, coming up, and the march is on April 26th. There's a whole week long of activities, so check that out. But you know, my feeling is we really need to, on a very personal level, individually, get more people engaged in these issues. So again, you know, anything you can do to educate and motivate more people to care is tremendous. It's going to take power of the people here. Like Tyson talked about, we're a two-party system. They're vying for all the corporate money just to get reelected. Our government is broken. It's going to take individuals and people to come together and organizations to work together to create these bridges and ties from the labor movement to the, you know, environmentalists from all different sectors. We need to come together and continue to fight for what is right. Corporations need to stop externalizing their costs. We need to get money out of politics. We need to transition to cleaner, renewable energy. And the way to do that is for all of us to unite together and to keep working. And again, you know, keep educating yourself on these issues and educate your friends, your family, your neighbors. EcoWatch is full of great content every single day to help share that to people that you know. It's really going to take educated people, educated Americans, to get us to a sustainable future.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Tyson?
Yeah, again, my organization is Public Citizen. The website is citizen.org. We work on a huge array of issues, not just energy and climate, but making sure that we've got a good healthcare system, that the medicines we use are safe. We do litigation before the Supreme Court. One of our attorneys argued the Citizens United case before the Supreme Court. We work on campaign finance and lobbying issues. And what we're interested in is a world where we've got laws and policies that prioritize working families' needs and that holds government and powerful special interests accountable. And what's clear is that our lack of an effective energy and climate policy is leaving working families behind. We've got to have a system that reinvests in a sustainable infrastructure. Remember, we were an oil exporting nation in 1956 when Congress passed the Interstate Highway Act. We were a huge supplier to the world of crude oil, and within 10 years, we'd become an oil importing nation. We spent over $300 billion because of the Interstate Highway Act on redesigning our communities to build roads around individual gas-powered automobiles. That's because it made sense to do that in 1956. It no longer makes sense today. We need a similar type of investment to commit ourselves to a renewable, sustainable future that working families can be a part of.
Okay, thank you. Before saying goodnight, turning it over to Blake for saying goodnight, I want to also thank the people, Blake himself, Blake Deppe, who was the producer of this event, Terry Albano, who's an editor of the People's World, who was the handler, invisible but very important role, a handler tonight, Urshel Johnson, who did technical assistance, and I want to thank all of the people who belong to and subscribe to and follow EcoWatch and Public Citizen and People's World for your participation tonight. We're all going to continue, hopefully, working together. We're all going to be out there in Washington on the 26th. So thank you all. Blake, do you have anything else to say before?
Sure. Just to wrap up, thanks a lot, John. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Tyson. Thank you, everyone, viewers, for tuning in. Be sure to keep an eye on EcoWatch and on Public Citizen and also on peoplesworld.org. And keep an eye on us for information regarding our next Hangout. We do this every month. So thanks, everyone, and good night.
Okay.
All right, cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Night.